Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I moved into this apartment complex about 6 months ago after getting a new job downtown. I'd been having issues with my home internet that morning, so I decided to take a walk around the complex to clear my head and give the router time to reset. It was around 12 p.m. on a Tuesday, perfect weather for a stroll. That's when I witnessed something that still blows my mind. I was walking past the main entrance when I heard shouting. There was this woman in her 50s, I'll call her Karen, absolutely losing her mind at some guy trying to get out of his car. He was holding a stack of pizza boxes and looked completely confused. Karen started yelling that he didn't belong there and that this was a private complex. The pizza guy tried to explain that he was just delivering pizza and had the correct address. She didn't care what he said and told him he needed to leave immediately. The delivery guy looked like he was in his 30s just trying to do his job. He had this bewildered expression like he couldn't believe what was happening. Karen was red in the face and blocking his car door. The pizza guy pointed out that someone had ordered pizza to apartment 304 and he was just trying to deliver it so he could get back to work. Karen accused him of lying and said no one there would order pizza from someone like him. The pizza guy, getting frustrated, kept trying to step around her, but she kept moving to block him. It was like watching the world's most ridiculous game of chess. The delivery guy pleaded with her to just let him do his job since he had other deliveries to make. Karen threatened to call security and said she was going to complain to whoever supposedly ordered the pizza. That's when things got really crazy. The delivery guy finally managed to get out of his car with the pizzas, thinking he could just walk past her. But Karen wasn't having it. She literally jumped in front of him like some kind of human barricade. Karen declared that he wasn't going anywhere. The pizza guy said this was insane and he was just delivering pizza. They were doing this weird dance where he'd try to go left, she'd block left, he'd try to go right, she'd block right. The poor guy was still holding those pizza boxes like his life depended on it. Then Karen did something unbelievable. She actually lifted her leg and kicked him right in the groin. Hard. The delivery guy doubled over and dropped to his knees, still somehow managing to keep the pizzas upright. The pizza guy cried out asking what was wrong with her. But Karen wasn't done. She had this juice bottle in her hand. Looked like orange juice or something. And she just dumped the whole thing over his head while he was down. Karen told him that's what he got for trespassing. The delivery guy was soaked, hurt, and probably questioning every life choice that led him to this moment. But then something snapped in him. While Karen was still standing over him like some kind of conqueror, he grabbed her leg and yanked it hard. Down she went, landing flat on her butt, with a thud that probably rattled the whole complex. Karen immediately started screaming like someone was murdering her. She yelled that he had attacked her and begged for someone to help. Then she started using racial slurs that I won't repeat here. It was absolutely disgusting. The delivery guy just sat there, still holding his stomach, looking like he wanted to disappear. Finally, a security guard showed up. About time, honestly. Karen immediately switched into victim mode. She told the guard she was thankful he was there and claimed the man had attacked her while she was just walking. The security guard asked the delivery guy if it was true. The pizza guy denied it and said she was lying. He explained that she had kicked him and poured juice on him while he was just trying to deliver pizza. Karen insisted he was making it all up and pointed to herself as evidence of what he had supposedly done to her. The security guard called his partner and they were both buying Karen's story. They started treating the delivery guy like he was some kind of criminal. The security guard said they were going to have to call the police. That's when I knew I had to step in. I've been recording most of this on my phone because it was just too crazy not to document. I interrupted and told the officers that I had seen the whole thing. The security guard asked if I was a witness. I said I was more than that and explained I had it all on video. I showed them my phone screen with the recording. Their faces completely changed when they watched Karen kick the delivery guy and pour juice on him. The security guard told Karen she was going to need to wait there until the police arrived. Karen asked what was happening and insisted she was the victim. I suggested they might want to check the complex security cameras too. When the police arrived, they took statements from everyone. They asked the delivery guy if he needed medical attention, but he said he was okay. Then they watched my video and pulled up the complex security footage. The police officer asked the delivery guy if he wanted to press charges. The pizza guy said absolutely. That's when things got really interesting. Turns out the pizza was being delivered to a high-ranking military officer who lived in the complex. When he heard what happened to his delivery guy, he was not happy. The military officer gave the delivery guy his personal number and told him to call directly if he needed anything for the case. The police had more than enough evidence. They arrested Karen right there, and of course she resisted arrest, making everything worse for herself. Karen protested that they couldn't arrest her because she lived there and paid good money to live in the complex. The police officer explained that she had assaulted the man and used racial slurs, so she was under arrest. It took 3 officers to get her in the car because she kept fighting them. The whole thing went to court. And with the video evidence and the military officer backing the delivery guy, Karen didn't stand a chance. She got 3 years in prison plus a huge fine. Being a nurse at the local hospital really prepares you for the worst humanity has to offer. But nothing could have prepared me for what I witnessed yesterday during what should have been a simple trip to buy some new scrubs. I'd just come from my yearly physical at my doctor's office. You know how it is when you work in healthcare. We're terrible at taking care of ourselves. I've been putting off this appointment for months, and my supervisor finally threatened to write me up if I didn't go. So there I was, fresh from getting 3 different vaccinations because I was behind on everything. And my arm felt like I'd been punched by a gorilla. No lollipop either. I asked the nurse about it, and she just laughed like I was joking. I wasn't joking. If you're going to stick needles in my arm, the least you can do is give me a piece of candy. My plan was simple: drive to the mall, buy some new scrubs because mine were getting embarrassingly worn out, maybe grab some lunch, and head home to ice my sore arm. Simple adult errands that I was definitely not looking forward to. Sometimes I wonder what my teenage self was thinking when I couldn't wait to grow up. Back then, staying up past 9 o'clock seemed like the ultimate freedom. Now I voluntarily go to bed at 9:30 p.m. and consider it a luxury. I was driving down Main Street mentally calculating how much I could afford to spend on new work clothes when I noticed something up ahead. There was a long line of cars, all with their hazard lights blinking, little funeral flags attached to their antennas. At the front was a hearse moving slowly and deliberately. A funeral procession. Now I've lived in this town my whole life, and I know the drill. When you see a funeral procession, you show respect. You pull over if you can, you don't honk, and you definitely don't try to cut through it. It's basic human decency. These people are grieving, saying goodbye to someone they loved, and the last thing they need is some impatient driver making their worst day even worse. I pulled up to the intersection where the procession was turning right. I was the first car in line, so I had a front row seat to everything that was about to unfold. Behind me, I could see a few other cars also waiting patiently. Well, most of them were waiting patiently. About 2 cars behind me was this bright red Porsche. Fancy car, probably cost more than I make in a year. At first, everything seemed normal. The procession was long, really long, and I settled in to wait. I turned off my radio out of respect and just sat there, watching the steady stream of mourners pass by. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Mixed in with the regular funeral cars were fire trucks. Not just 1 or 2, but dozens of them. Ladder trucks, engines, rescue vehicles, all with their lights on, all part of the procession. This wasn't just any funeral. This was a firefighter's funeral. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Somewhere in that hearse was a person who had dedicated their life to running into burning buildings while everyone else ran out. Someone who had probably saved countless lives. And now their family and fellow firefighters were saying goodbye. The gravity of the moment settled over me, and I felt honored just to witness it even from the sidelines. But apparently not everyone felt the same way. After about 2 minutes of waiting, I heard it. A sharp, angry honk from behind me. I looked in my rearview mirror and saw the Porsche driver leaning on his horn. My jaw dropped. Who honks at a funeral procession? Who does that? The honking stopped for a minute and I thought maybe the guy had come to his senses. Then I heard him shouting something angry and impatient about wanting everyone to hurry up and get moving. This man was actually yelling at a funeral procession. At a firefighter's funeral procession. I rolled up my windows because his voice was carrying, and I didn't want the mourning families to have to hear that garbage. But he wasn't done. At the 4-minute mark, he just laid on his horn and kept it there. A long, continuous honk that echoed off the buildings and completely disrupted the solemn moment. I watched in my side mirror as people in the procession turned their heads toward the sound. Some of the firefighters walking alongside the hearse looked back with expressions of disbelief and anger. I wanted to get out of my car and tell this guy exactly what I thought of him, but I didn't want to make the situation worse for the grieving families. Instead, I just sat there gripping my steering wheel and hoping he would stop. Then, at the 5-minute mark, he did something that made my nurse training kick in, because I was pretty sure I was about to witness a cardiac event from sheer rage. The Porsche suddenly jerked out of line. He swung wide to the left, gunned his engine, and zoomed around both cars in front of him. Then, and I still can't believe this actually happened, he forced his way right into the middle of the funeral procession. I watched in horror as he cut off a car full of mourners, probably family members of the fallen firefighter, and started weaving through the procession like he was merging onto a highway. Horns started honking, not angry honks, but shocked, disbelieving honks from the funeral attendees. But here's the thing about firefighter funerals that this genius apparently didn't consider. They're attended by a lot of other first responders, police officers, paramedics, other firefighters. And right now, all of those people were not in a good mood. The Porsche made it maybe 5 car lengths into the procession before karma caught up with him in the form of a state trooper who had been part of the procession. The officer immediately hit his lights and sirens and pulled the Porsche over to the side of the road. Within seconds, 3 more police cars from the procession had joined him. The Porsche was completely surrounded by law enforcement, all of whom had just watched this man disrespect their fallen colleague in the most appalling way possible. I sat there watching while the procession continued past the traffic stop. The officer who had pulled him over was clearly having a very heated discussion with the Porsche driver, who seemed to be waving his hands around wildly, probably trying to explain why his time was more important than a firefighter's funeral. More officers kept stopping to join the group. By the time the last car in the procession had passed, there were 6 police cars surrounding the Porsche. The driver was now standing outside his car, and even from a distance, I could see he was getting the lecture of a lifetime from multiple officers who were clearly not buying whatever excuse he was trying to give them. When the intersection finally cleared and I was able to make my turn, I drove slowly past the scene. The Porsche driver was now sitting on the curb with his head in his hands, while multiple officers wrote what looked like enough tickets to wallpaper his overpriced car. I may or may not have given him a little wave when I drove by. For some years now, I've been at this government office helping people with their paperwork and applications all day. The work itself is pretty satisfying because I genuinely like helping folks navigate the system, but let's be real, government pay isn't exactly what you'd call generous. I live paycheck to paycheck like most of my co-workers, so I've gotten creative about my hobbies and side interests. When I was younger, I had this terrible habit of biting my nails down to nothing. They were always weak and flaky, breaking at the worst times. About a year ago, I decided I was tired of being embarrassed by my hands every time I had to hand someone documents or shake hands during meetings. I did some research online and found this gel nail kit on Amazon for $50. It seemed like a good investment, way cheaper than going to a salon every few weeks. Setting up my little nail station at home was actually pretty fun. I watched countless YouTube tutorials and practiced on myself until I got decent at it. My friends started noticing how nice my nails looked, and a few of them asked if I'd do theirs too. It became this relaxing thing we'd do while catching up over wine or watching movies. Nothing fancy, just friends helping friends look good without breaking the bank. So, A couple weeks back, I'm getting ready to leave work and head to my friend's place. She had this party coming up and wanted her nails done, so we planned to order pizza, do her nails, and maybe watch a movie afterwards. Just a chill evening. I had my nail kit sitting on top of my locker because the lockers are pretty small and I didn't want to put it on the floor next to my work shoes. I made the mistake of mentioning my plans to one of my coworkers during our morning break. This woman, probably in her mid-50s, works mostly remote but comes in a few days a week. We're not particularly close, just the usual workplace, small talk when she's around. Well, apparently that casual conversation was all she needed to spot my nail kit and decide I was her new personal nail technician. It started innocently enough around 9 in the morning. Karen walked over and started gushing about how gorgeous my teal nail polish looked and asking if that was really a nail kit. I told her thanks and mentioned that I was heading to my friend's place after work to do her nails. She got all excited and said how fun that sounded and that I must be really good at it. I should have seen the warning signs, but I just smiled and went back to my desk. That was my first mistake. By 10:30 she was back. Karen started complaining about how her husband thinks getting nails done professionally is such a waste of money and how he just doesn't understand why women need to spend so much on that stuff. I agreed that cost was part of why I started doing my own. Then she got this look in her eyes and suggested that I could probably practice on her sometime, and how she'd love to try that teal shade. I gave her a polite smile and tried to focus on my computer screen, but she just kept standing there. After what felt like forever, she finally wandered back to her desk. 11:15 rolled around and she was back again. Karen said she'd been thinking about what I said earlier, and it would be so nice if I could do her nails during lunch since I was already bringing my kit anyway. I explained that I was actually planning to eat lunch and then head straight to my friend's place after work. But she kept pushing, saying it wouldn't take that long and that she'd really appreciate just a quick manicure. I told her I only had 30 minutes for lunch and really needed to eat. She brushed that off and insisted we could make it work and that she was sure it wouldn't take the whole time. I tried to be polite but direct, explaining that I had plans and needed my lunch break to actually eat. She finally walked away, but I could tell she wasn't happy about it. 12 o'clock came around and guess who was hovering by my desk again? Karen asked if we were doing this or what, claiming she'd cleared her schedule for lunch. I reminded her that I'd told her earlier I couldn't do her nails during lunch because I had plans after work and needed to eat. She got frustrated and said I was just sitting there anyway, so come on, it would be fun. She kept insisting I could practice on her, and she'd get pretty nails, calling it a win-win situation. This went on for another 10 minutes. She kept pushing and pushing, acting like I'd already agreed to give her a free manicure. I started giving shorter responses, hoping she'd get the hint. I kept saying I couldn't do it. She kept asking why not, since I had everything right there. When I finally just said because I didn't want to, she actually called me selfish and said I was already doing nails anyway, so what was the big deal? By this point, I was getting seriously annoyed. This woman had been harassing me for 4 straight hours about doing her nails for free. I'd been polite, I'd explained my position multiple times, and she just wouldn't let it go. Finally, I had enough. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her clearly that I was there to eat my sandwich during my 30-minute unpaid break, not give her a free manicure. I explained that I'd told her no multiple times and asked her to please drop it because she was making me really uncomfortable. Her face went through about 5 different expressions in the span of 3 seconds. First shock, then anger, then this weird wounded victim look. She got all huffy and said she was just trying to be friendly and that I didn't have to be so rude about it. I told her I wasn't being rude, I was being clear, and there was a difference. She huffed and walked back to her desk. For the rest of that day and the entire next week, she completely ignored me. Wouldn't make eye contact, wouldn't respond. If I said good morning, acted like I was invisible. Honestly, it was kind of peaceful. She works remotely most of the time anyway, so it's not like we needed to collaborate on anything important. But then my other co-workers started coming to me with some interesting information. My desk neighbor pulled me aside on Thursday and let me know that Karen had been telling people I was really mean to her about some nail thing. When I asked what exactly she was saying, my coworker explained that Karen was claiming I'd promised to do her nails and then backed out at the last minute and made her feel bad. She was acting like I'd really hurt her feelings. I explained what actually happened, and my coworker just rolled her eyes and said that sounded more like the real story. Turns out Karen had cornered her last month, trying to get her to split the cost of some expensive lunch she wanted delivered. My co-worker said the woman had no boundaries. Over the next few days, more people came forward with their own Karen stories. Apparently, she'd asked someone else to drive her to the airport during their lunch break because she didn't want to pay for parking. She'd tried to get another co-worker to cover her desk duties for a whole afternoon so she could leave early for a hair appointment. The list went on and on. The following Monday, I walked into work to find an email from our supervisor about maintaining professional boundaries and appropriate workplace requests. It was clearly directed at Karen, though no names were mentioned. Turns out someone had complained to management about her behavior. My supervisor called me into her office later that morning and asked if I'd heard there was some kind of incident with Karen last week. I explained that she'd kept asking me to do her nails during lunch break and wouldn't take no for an answer, so I finally had to be very direct with her. My supervisor told me that multiple people had mentioned similar issues with inappropriate requests and that I'd handled it correctly. She said if Karen continued to make me uncomfortable, I should let her know immediately. The whole thing was so ridiculous. Who asks a co-worker they barely know for a free manicure and then harasses them about it for 4 straight hours and then plays the victim when they finally get told no? Karen still works here, but she is back to being mostly remote. When she does come in, she pretends I don't exist, which honestly works out perfectly for everyone. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.